Good morning. Good morning. I like hearing the conversation in the room. And I like the fact that it's a full room, especially with the rain. As I hopped in my car, I thought we had every detail down except for the weather. So I'm glad you navigated through. Good morning and welcome to our second Winning with Integrity program. The series was created by the Center for Ethical Business Cultures, known as CEBC, the Veritas Institute, and the Department for Ethics and Business Law in the Opus College of Business here at the University of St. Thomas. We've also received a lot of help from the Department of Athletics that's here today. My name is Michelle Rovang, and I'm the director of the Veritas Institute. The Veritas Institute fosters ethically responsible and profitable business cultures. We work with CEBC to take and look at businesses and help them look at their principles and how well they've driven them into their organization. With the support of our dean, Stephanie Lenway, we spent last year working with leaders in business and in sports to create Winning with Integrity as an ongoing conversation on the intersection of sports, ethics, and principled leadership. Sincere appreciation to Dean Lenway for her support. She's joined here today with UST trustee Kathy Higgins-Victor. Additional thanks to EBL faculty member John Wendt for his deep knowledge, the Department of Health and Human Performance, and Shared Services for making this a reality. Building commitment to ethical conduct and principled leadership in sports and in business begins with the individual and the values and ethics they bring into an organizational setting. Organizationally, it requires building a culture that aligns individuals with an organizational purpose and its values, core values. This alignment requires leading with integrity as an essential element in both athletics and business. Building a culture also requires a set of processes and metrics. Processes and metrics to determine if they're tied to doing well. The common good is being served, and that's why this was such a big fit with the University of St. Thomas. This symposium is a wonderful fit as University of St. Thomas's focuses on the common good for our culture. We're extremely fortunate to have the Minnesota Lynx at the front table, an ongoing champion in this community. I want to give them a hats off. I also want to get a hats off to the longest distance, to the St. Cloud State Huskies that drove here this morning. I think they win. You all made this a reality, and I will point to our sponsors this morning. Our first sponsor is bronze sponsor, the Veritas Group, which provides high-end, high-quality account and finance professionals for interim executive needs. Thank you for your assistance today. Our second bronze sponsor, FVI Twin Cities, has been an ongoing partner of the university and to the CEBC organization. We extend a special thanks to their leadership and to all of the FVI members for supporting this symposium, the Winning with Integrity Symposium. We also have the upcoming 18th Minnesota Business Ethics Awards, which they are sponsoring. In addition, FEI has created a membership for several faculty and staff from OCB. I want to welcome all of their members here today. Please give them a round of applause. Please remember to sign up for those continuing education credits outside the door. Outside the door, you will also find from our lead sponsor, EY's Research, and that leads us to what we are discussing. In the course of researching this specific role that sports plays in developing leadership traits in females, we were able to draw upon our ongoing partnership with presenting sponsor EY, a Big Four audit firm and the third largest professional firm in the world. EY partner and St. Thomas alum Joe McCarney and managing partner Mike O'Leary were both very dedicated to demonstrating the role that sport plays at every stage of professional women's lives, from the youth to women and students to the C-suite executives. I would like to introduce EY's Mike O'Leary to the stage to introduce our keynote speaker this morning.
Thanks, Michelle, and a big thank you to St. Thomas and the Institute. It is great to be here today. I have to say, as a partner at an accounting and consulting firm, it's kind of tough to hang with this group because we don't normally have gold medals at all of our other meetings. It's normally not quite that exciting when we get together in a boardroom. But what a great crowd here. As Michelle said, to have a sold-out crowd here on a rainy Wednesday morning is tremendous, and it obviously speaks to all of your interest and passion in the topics today and some of our special guests. So my congratulations to all the amazing athletes that are here today as well. How about one more round of applause? So when we talked with St. Thomas about sponsoring today, it took about 12 seconds before we said, yes, we're in. This is such an important initiative, and for our firm, we have our women's business athlete network, and it's really become a unique venue for us when we think about our priorities and our agenda around inclusiveness and diversity, and also as we look to recruit better talent and more diverse talent. It's become just so important. One of the things we found that Michelle alluded to is if you look at the C-suite in large organizations, about 94% of the female C-suite members played sports, and over half of them played at the collegiate level. So that's pretty powerful. We're numbers people, so when we think about those numbers, those stats definitely do not lie. So just the power of athletics and how that can transcend into a lifelong journey is just so amazing. And as we look at that link to the continued success at our firm, at clients, in all sorts of different arenas in life, we are very dedicated to sponsoring that to make sure it continues just to be a great avenue for women athletes to excel. We are extremely excited today to have our keynote speaker, Summer Sanders, who is over here, and my partner, colleague, Joe McCarney, and I actually had a great opportunity on Monday night to be in New York at the Big Red Ball as part, yeah, it was a great event. As part of the initiative around Let Them Play. So Summer, as all of you know, has 4 Olympic medals, 2 of which are gold, that I actually just got to hold on to one of the gold medals, which was very cool. And I think she's just such an inspiration, as you'll hear about today. After her great athletic success, the Olympic victories, she's gone on to just a tremendous career in business, in media, broadcasting, and as we saw on Monday night in New York, just a real passion for giving back to her community and causes that she's so passionate about. So without further ado, how about a big, warm Minnesota welcome to Summer Sanders? All right. You're welcome. Yeah.
I was just saying, thank you so much for mentioning Right to Play. Thank you, EY, always supporting me, which is why I love to support them and to be here today. So I will tell you what the Big Red Ball was. It's for an organization called Right to Play. We bring sport and play to developing countries and children who've been affected by war. We are mostly in Africa, Asia, and the Middle East, but we do have pilot programs here in the US, specifically in New York, with early childhood education. So, play-based learning, it's from like pre-K all the way into adolescence, teaching them how to be successful, confident members of a society, which we all can relate to, right? It's just different levels of devastation and or difficulties and adversity. Okay, so that's Right to Play. Check it out if you have a moment. But first of all, thank you so much for having me here on this rainy, awesome day. This is just... I love the fact that you all showed up, and I heard it's like not even just sold out. We packed them in more than we even expected. So thank you so much. I'm always excited to be around people who share the same passion that I do. I loved sports from the very beginning, but I was not good at them in the very beginning. And it's hard for people to remember that And I tend to remind my fellow parents, like sports parents now, saying, were you really good when you first tried butterfly? Because chances are you weren't. So don't give up on it just yet. And don't give up on your kids just yet in that sport. It's always about the love for your sport. And so let me take you back to how I started in swimming. I was 4. I grew up in Northern California. And if my dad was here right now standing on this stage, he would tell you the same story. he was too cheap to turn on the air conditioning. So literally in my youth, in the valley of California, where it gets to be around 110 in the summertime, he never turned on the air conditioning. And his line was, "Why should I? Because I have a built-in air conditioner in the backyard," which was our pool. So I was in that pool 24/7. Well, when I was little, my mom wanted me to be pool safe, so I got lessons. I hated every second of it. And then I figured out I actually could swim, and I wanted to be just like my older brother. So my brother joined the summer rec swim team, which is kind of how all swimmers start, eating candy and swimming in the summertime. And I wanted to be just like my bro. So I went to tryouts, and they looked at me. I was this roly-poly little, my hair wouldn't grow. It would grow long here and short here. I mean, I was a wreck. And they said, "Well, we would love for her to be 6 to join the team. But at 4, well, if she can swim a lap of the pool, then I guess she can do it." So I swam my lap of the pool, and I was a sugar bear from then on out. Fast forward to my first swim meet. And this is a lesson that I go back to so much now as a parent. And I find there's so much value in this lesson at age 4 in my first swim meet, more than any other lesson almost in my life. I was standing on the blocks, again, the same image of just all belly, my stars and stripes swimsuit, no swim cap, no goggles, standing there with this look of terror on my face. And then the terror turned to tears. And then my mom was on the side, I'm sure, thinking, "Oh my God, all these people think I made my 4-year-old get up on the blocks." So she runs to the starter, and they stop the meet. And she comes up to me and says, "Now, Summer, you don't have to do this if you don't want to. But it's just one lap of the pool, and look who's at the other end of the pool for you." And it was my dad and my brother and all my new Sugar Bear teammates. And somewhere in that awesome speech that she was giving me, I convinced myself that I could do it. And my look of terror and tears turned to a look of determination that she said she would see often later in my life. So I'm looking this way, no tears. She turns to the starter and says, "I guess we're good to go." Next thing you know, the gun goes off. Remember those days of the gun? So the gun goes off. I dive in, I swim my heart out, and I touch the wall. I didn't drown. I made it to the other end. I got 3rd in what I just learned like 10 years ago was actually a full heat of 8. So I officially got 3rd. But most importantly, I touched that wall. I get out, and I get my hug from my family and my friends. And now all of a sudden, this roly-poly is walking with her shoulders back and her head held high. And why? Not because I got 3rd. I didn't even know my time. It's because I was so scared to do this. I was so scared. And I was really on the edge. I was on the cusp of giving up. My mom could have easily just pulled me off the blocks, and I would never have done it. But there always has to be that first time. And I did it. And not only did I do it, but I touched the wall, and then I got to feel that sense of accomplishment. And I have to tell you, that's like the drug that I wanted for the rest of my life. I wanted to feel that sense of accomplishment, especially when I was so scared to try it. So I was hooked. Age 4, I was hooked. My brother retired at the age of 10. He wanted to pursue other things like soccer and flag football and whatnot. But I stuck with it, ups and downs. And we're talking today about winning with integrity and being leaders and all of that. I certainly wasn't a leader in the beginning, and I did not always win with integrity. In fact, one time in particular, I remember I was pretty good at swimming at a very early age, my mom will tell you. I did have a lot of natural talent, but I did get beat often, and I did have awesome, severe, amazing, fierce rivals that made me so much better. And this one meet in particular, I thought I was just going to cruise in and win. Just touch the wall, no big deal. And this girl in lane 2 beat me to the wall. And I got out, and I was that kid that you can't even look at, right? Because you're so embarrassed. I took my goggles off, and I did not throw them down, but I was crying. And do you know what I had the nerve to say? I had the nerve to say, really loudly, "The timers are wrong." Mom, those timers are wrong. And I think maybe there were tears. And she looked at me. She was like, stepped back and said, "Are you kidding me right now? Is that serious?" And then she started laughing. And then I started laughing, and she said, Summer, you just didn't see that girl, and she wanted it more. It's really funny because when I was watching the Golden State and the Cavs in the NBA championship last year, it was, I mean, I know it's so simple, and it wasn't just this, but I really looked at LeBron and the city of Cleveland, and I was like, they want it more. Like, they want it so badly, and it's amazing what you can do if you have the goal and the determination and the heart, and you really, really want it. And that was a really important lesson. I think the other thing that we mistake is that this word failure is a really bad word, right? I wish we could create another word because it just has this like, oh, it was awful, I did so bad. To me, failure is such an incredible gift, right? Again, you're sort of confronted with a moment where you could give up. Be really easy just to walk away when you have your bad race or your bad moment in business or a bad report or not perfect. Everybody's obsessed with perfection right now. Failure is such an incredible gift, and it's a moment when even now, I find, I have to step back and figure out how to be better. I look at it and go, oh, it was a reality check. How can I be better next time in this moment? And if you don't take that opportunity to really dissect it and learn it and get better from it, then you've missed this incredible gift. I have 2 stories, and I don't want to take too much time because I know we have our awesome panel to get to. But the first really was I host the show for CBS, and we have some awesome athletes on the show and sports reporters and things like that. One of them is Lisa Leslie, basketball player. And I was talking about my beloved Stanford Cardinal football team and our loss to University of Washington, which was like 40, it could have been like 450 to 0. The fact is Stanford got 0, and they were in the 40s. And I thought to myself, how do you recover from a loss like that when you're a ranked team? They were top 10, and they lost that severely. It wasn't a close game at all. And she said something really interesting to me. She goes, oh, no. They won't look at it as a loss like that. They'll dissect it into every little mini failure, if you want to use that word, or the way Washington beat them in all the little ways. So then the loss, the big blow-up loss, turns into a lot of little moments that they can correct. And to me, my brain was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. That's exactly how they need to do it. For me, my biggest failure came at 15. Well, I probably had other failures, but this was like the monumental one. When I wasn't supposed to make the Olympic team, and I had never qualified for finals. Back in the day in 1988, we just had prelims and then finals. Now they have prelims, semis, and finals. That's what makes Michael Phelps even more amazing than amazing, because he swam almost twice as many events. But back then, I had never made a finals in a national championship before. Was not considered very good. In fact, I had just come off of a season where I was really, really bad. I mentally wasn't in the game. But I show up at these Olympic trials, and my coach says the most beautiful thing to me. He says, I just want you to use this meet as experience. Just have fun. Just soak it up and use it as experience. Now, to me, that is like, pressure off my shoulders, no big deal, no one expects me to do anything. Okay, let's go back and just swim like that 4-year-old just for fun. Maybe a little bit scared, but just for fun. So I do that, and I swim really well, and fast forward to the last day, and I accidentally make finals. And I don't just accidentally make finals. I accidentally qualify 3rd for finals. Now let me refresh your memory, because I know we're straight off of this awesome Rio Olympic Games. But it is so fierce in the United States. Our Olympic trials in swimming is by far more competitive than the Olympic Games, more stressful, more pressure-filled. Because on that day and that moment, we don't have a committee that can put you on the team if you had the flu, or if you broke your foot, or if you just had a bad race. You have got to touch the wall at night, 1st or 2nd, or you can wait 4 years and you can try it all over again. So I qualified 3rd for finals. Was this 15-year-old freaking out? Yes, I was freaking out. So then my coach came up to me and gave me some more great advice, because I'm a simplistic person. I don't need a lot of information. Just say it to me really quickly, and that's how I roll. And he said, okay, 200 IM, 1 lap of each stroke. I want you to go as fast as you can from the very beginning. And if you die, you die. But at least you gave it everything you had. And I was like, that is so perfect. I love it. I'm in. So it's kind of a big production, the Olympic trials. Like, you have to go to this ready room, which is the oddest thing in the world. You make all your competitors sit in these plastic chairs right next to each other for like 10 minutes before you race. Remember Phelps face? That's it. Is that the weirdest thing? Like, all of you just come together in a little cubicle, and I want you to stand here for 10 minutes. So I would always check in for the ready room, and then I'd leave. But this time I stayed. And I mean, these women that I was around, one of the women had already been to the Olympics. She was spitting on the wall. I was like, what am I getting into? This is crazy. So then we have to parade around the pool. And so me, thinking I'm never going to be back here at this point, I was high-fiving all my friends. I was having so much fun. I'm smiling like I'd already won. I'm like Rocky walking out for his. So I get behind my blocks, and that's when panic sets in just a little bit. And then I think of what my coach says: go as fast as you can from the very beginning. So I dive in. Butterfly is the first stroke. I'm cruising on that. I'm not looking at anybody else, just concentrating on my in between my 2 lane lines. I push off on backstroke. That's the second stroke. Again, a really good stroke for me. I can just get into a groove. Then breaststroke, which was my best stroke, and I loved to build it up and get faster and get faster. I was in lane 3, and I had snuck a peek at this point, and I saw that lanes 1 and 2 were behind me. So I thought, at least I'm not going to be last. I push off for freestyle, and I take my first breath. Now I'm looking at lanes 4 through 8, and I don't see anything. And I think, oh my God, I've already died, and everyone is so far out of me. So I take a couple more strokes, and I take another breath, and where do I see everyone? They're just coming up, and they're at my feet. What? I'm thinking back to what my coach told me. I'm like, this was not a part of our plan. I have no idea what to do now. So now all of a sudden, this really collected head, this 15-year-old brain that had been doing it right, it hadn't been thinking about everything she can't control, and had only been thinking about what she can control, which is in between her 2 lane lines, and swimming with love and with passion and with excitement and no expectations. Now I felt all the expectations, and I was thinking about everything from, it was a September Olympic Games, so I'm like, I'm going to be a junior in high school. I can't miss a month of school. And I didn't pack enough clothes for Seoul, South Korea. How is this all going to work? And meanwhile, I was like that cartoon character that's spinning her wheels, and I was trying so hard. My parents are in the stands, and they're cheering their heads off. And I touch the wall, and I look at the scoreboard, and I see my lane 3, and then I see a 3 next to it. And then I see my time, which I remember was a 2:16.8, and I'd bettered my time by 3 seconds. Till this day, my favorite number is 3, but that second 3 means I got third by 27 100ths of a second. A girl, Whitney Hedgepeth, in lane 8, maybe wanted it just a little bit more than I did, and touched the wall and made the team. And I was so excited at that moment. I thought, I can compete against these girls that are spitting against the wall, and I can be tough, and I can do this. And it was a huge moment for me, confidence. And it was also fueling my fire. But then I saw the moment, and I saw how close I was. And that's where I can understand people thought it was a failure. So I would walk around. It was like somebody died. Oh, God, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And I'm like, why are you so sorry? Yeah, I missed making the Olympic team. But then I was determined to not only make the Olympic team 4 years from then, but to kick butt. I did not want anybody beating me to the wall. I did not want anybody passing me at the last second. In fact, that visual and that memory stuck with me, that I would race even like the masters swimmer, the age 75-year-old that was just coming in for a leisurely swim, but we happened to be under the flags at the same time. I was touching him. I was touching the wall first. I was going to touch him out. So you pick the things that you think and the memories that you think can fuel you to always feel like you are that youth, that you remember why you got into it in the very beginning. And this is something I use to this day. We're going to start with the panel now, but I'll just say this. Some of the most important moments of my life now, I learned through the eyes of my kids. And I could go on and on and on. I will just say, my daughter consistently reminds me that the most important part of any sport, of any job, of any major moment is the journey to get there. It really is not about the reward at the end. The reward is that you had the guts to do it, and that you had the guts to do it with your whole heart. So, I have about 50,000 other things I want to say, but I appreciate you guys so much. I think we're going to bring the panel up here, and we can talk more inside stuff and other things. So thank you so much for having me this morning. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Summer. My name is Dawn Elm, and I am a faculty member here at the University of St. Thomas in business ethics. And I also am currently serving as the interim president and CEO for the Center of Ethical Business Cultures. So I am absolutely honored to be here today to be able to talk about a topic that is so important to all of us. The panelists, as you are well aware, here to my right, are Summer, who just talked and is circulating her Olympic medals around for people to touch and maybe put over your neck.
Yes, you can
briefly.
Wear them. You can wear them.
And Carol Surface, who is the Chief Human Resources Officer at Medtronic. Ruth Sin, who is the head basketball coach for women's basketball here at the University of St. Thomas. And Leah Olson, who is with the Fox Media Group, who is a journalist and a broadcaster and an analyst. So we have some really wonderful panelists here to have a conversation about sports and leadership, in particular, women in sports and leadership, and that leadership in both sports and in business. So we've been talking about this important topic, and Summer has given us some incredible experiences that she went through as a determined and dedicated athlete. And so my first question for the panelists, and just a general question for all of you, is can you tell us a couple of examples of some of the obstacles that you have seen that have been in place for women in sports and then also in business in terms of leadership?
So we were talking earlier about the transition for an athlete into what I call the real world. And I feel like it is one of the toughest transitions. For me, going from swimming, a swimmer, into the world of basketball, and I hosted a show called Inside Stuff. I mean, I loved basketball, and there was a second where my brother would say to me, "You're just like Cheryl Miller," and I actually believed him, which was he was making fun of me. So I couldn't really play, but I loved the game. And I did have moments where I actually had players that were like, "Oh, aren't you afraid you're going to break a nail?" And I thought to myself, oh, I always felt bad for the people who would say that because I knew at some point they were going to learn my resume. And so I never let it bother me, simply because I had that confidence that I got through sport. And so, that for me was probably the toughest challenge, was running into that and not saying anything to them. I rose above and let them figure it out later. But for the most part, for me, my transition into basketball and media, the scariest part was being judged. I was used to touching the wall, and I'd see my place and my time. Now I'm auditioning for things, and I'm waiting to hear, is my hair color the right color? Is my skin color the right color? Am I the right height? Am I the right gender? And none of that would be told to me until they would just say yes or no. And oftentimes you wouldn't find out. So that transition was very difficult for me.
One of the things that I've observed, and actually there's been a lot of research on this topic of confidence, in women. And, you know, there's this book that was written by Caddy Kay and Claire Shipman called The Confidence Code. And, you know, in that book, they talk about just in general the way women kind of code information. And I'll give you an example. You have a man and a woman who look at a job description, and, you know, the job description says, we require 15 years of experience in whatever, broadcast journalism. And a man reads it, he has 10 experience, he's like, nah, I got this down pat. I am the guy. A woman reads it with 14.5 years of experience, and she says to herself, I'm not qualified. I probably shouldn't put my name in the hat. And that sort of crisis of confidence, I think, extends itself from, you know, depending on the situation, either sports or competition, into the business world. And that's where I see women, at least in the business world, oftentimes not kind of getting off the porch and getting into the game on the field because they in their own heads have determined themselves either not to have the right amount of experience or not to have the confidence to have a voice in a male-dominated room. And so I think that that's a really big topic for women, and getting our collective minds around what we bring to the table, and you know, kind of spooling up our own level of confidence to raise our hand, put our name in the hat, and as women supporting other women who see great women and talented women, and urging women to get into the game, so to speak. So overcoming these moments and crises of confidence, I think, is the biggest opportunity for us collectively.
I would agree. I think one of the things we talk about with our female athletes is kind of tooting your own horn. Females do not feel comfortable pushing what they may perceive as their strengths all the time. With our young ladies, we have what's called an adopt-a-player program, where we have mentors that come back and they mentor our current women's basketball programs. We have alumni in the room right now that are our mentors. And they're a great resource, but one of the things that we talk constantly about is having the confidence, having the courage to stand up and say all the gifts that we bring. Women aren't comfortable. They would rather have someone else bring those topics up, but they need to be the pushers with that. And that's one of our concerns, is making that transition, that they take an active role in promoting themselves and getting that opportunity.
Well, for myself, I have to tell you a little bit about my very odd basketball career, because one, it's a basketball career that could never happen in this day and age of specializing in starting sports at the age of 3. So I didn't come to basketball because I was 6'1" at the tender age of 11. Yes, it was a painful, lanky thing to see, and so I didn't like all the eyes that were always on me, and so I didn't want to create more eyes on me by being in front of everybody, and so finally, it wasn't until I went to a school that didn't have sports, and then finally I transferred into South High, and it was my junior year, and my brothers were like, try out for the team, you should. And so I walked into the gym, and the coach was like, who are you? And I'm like, well, I'm new here. And he was like, where have you played? And I'm like, I haven't. And he was like, okay. And so I tried out, and he was like, okay, wow, you have not learned any bad skills, any bad traits, because you haven't spent a lot of time playing basketball. And he's like, I think I can coach you to play this game. And so that was the first time in my life that this frame, this 6'1" body, found a space that had confidence that it belonged in. And so I just took right to it, and then I did something odd. I graduated a year early from high school. So I graduated my junior year, and because I'd only played a year of basketball, I went on to play at Minneapolis Community College to kind of hone the basketball skills. And so I learned the game there, and then 2 years later was asked to come over to the University of Minnesota and walk on. And so I'm feeling good because I had some pretty big accomplishments at the community college level, and so I'm feeling good. And so I walk into the barn over at University of Minnesota, and I look, and I was like, oh, like, I am no longer the tallest. I am by far the skinniest. I haven't really learned like some of the fundamentals of like the left-handed layup. There was just, and so I was like, this is going to be interesting. And so after playing with the big girls on the court, I went home and I said to my mom, I go, this isn't going to work. And she said, okay, pick 2 things that you know how to do and you can do really well. And that's all you're going to do, and that's how you're going to get into games, and that's how you're going to show them how you belong. And so I knew I could rebound, and I knew I was faster than everybody, and I spent the rest of my career focusing on those 2 things. And by my senior year, I became a captain of the team. I started, and the only way I was getting into those games was if I was getting those rebounds and if we needed some speed. And so it taught me, that sporting experience taught me that you do have to focus on what you're good at, and you have to recognize that and bring that to the table. And I would have never been able to do it the other way and really try to work on my dribbling and work on all of my worst attributes and try to get to that same level. I had to do what I did well. And I think that that is one thing for women in the workplace, is like we need to be authentic and true of like, what is it that we're bringing? And we all bring something really big, but you have to really focus on that piece and bring that even bigger.
Thank you. That was amazing. You all seem to be talking about confidence as a really key thing for women to have in sports, and then also in business, and that the sports experience leads to perhaps that in business. What are some of the things that you could do to create that kind of confidence? I know, Leah, I know you do mentoring with young women with your Rethink the Win program. Ruth, you are doing mentoring, of course, with the team and the athletes. And Carol, you're also doing it, of course, with the women that you're training and seeing in the executive positions at Medtronic. And Summer, well, you're doing television shows and all kinds of incredible public things. Never mind the red ball is for the
Right to play.
The right
Yes,
to
thank you.
play.
Glad I mentioned
I got the red ball part,
Yes.
and then I was like, no,
That's
okay.
our symbol. Look after yourself, look after one another.
See?
That's what it says on there.
So what are some of the things that you are specifically doing that are helping to overcome those obstacles to make these women, young and older women, to be more confident? Leah, do you want to start?
Sure. So you mentioned I've just started a platform called Rethink the Win, and it's about encouraging parents, athletes, coaches to rethink the win at all costs mentality in sports. We see that play out later in life in the work world when everything becomes win at all costs, or win just for the money, and avoid everything else that's positive. And I think what happens when we teach our athletes that is we lose those positive attributes that you really have during sports. And Summer talked about those intangible attributes that they don't just come out of nowhere. They are created, they are molded through athletes. There's coaches bring those to you, and then you can take the leadership role in that. And so if we have athletes that don't understand that, and the only concern at the age of 8 is that they win the game, I believe they come out as empty athletes. And I think that affects every step that we take in sports and in the work world afterwards. So what I've been doing is going around and speaking to athletes and letting them know you have to be more than an athlete. And if there isn't something in front of that athlete, like a student athlete or a smart athlete or whatever that other piece is, then being an athlete isn't going to help you later in life. And what's so amazing is I just talked to a young girl, a group of soccer girls, 11U, super good. These ladies by the age of 15 will know if they have full scholarships to college. And they want to be in it because they see the intangibles of it. They have a really good coach who brings that to them, that it isn't about the win, it's about the development of you as a person. And so they're going to come out with that confidence, they're going to come out ready to compete, and they're going to come out and they're going to want to do it in a principled way. And so to me, it's reinforcing that to our parents, to our coaches, and to the athletes.
We talk with our basketball team all the time that the true beauty in this whole athletic experience is the person you become in the process. As female athletes, think about all you have learned through your athletic endeavors. You've learned how to collaborate with the team. You've learned how to set goals, how to take ownership, responsibility, how to be on time and manage things. That's a skill set that you'll learn for the rest of your life. But in the process, when we're talking about the people we become, it is exactly what Leah was saying, is that we want to embrace challenges. We want to meet every opportunity as a growth experience. It's not the outcome on the scoreboard that's the number one thing. It's about who we are and how we work collectively. And so that's what we really enjoy, and I really enjoy watching my young ladies. Seeing them not sure, just like Summer said, on those starting blocks, just unsure, but knowing that they have the courage to continue to take that chance and take that risk, and then possibly failing. In our culture, we talk about what failure is, and we have to redefine failure. As females, we see failure or a mistake as failure. In our program, what we try to do is we try to be mistake-driven. And what we want them to do is see a mistake as an opportunity to learn and an opportunity to grow. I have a quote in my office that says, if it doesn't challenge you, it won't change you. And so we want them to be challenged. And when they come to us, they're not sure about challenges. Everything is better if it's easier, if they know they can do it. And that's the difference between confidence and courage. Courage is not knowing that you can do it, but you're going to be willing to take that chance and willing to take that risk and make that mistake, but learn from it. And so that's when we grow and we improve. And so we constantly are talking about accepting challenges, taking that next step, and giving to a level that you might not thought you could be at, and you'll eventually get that. And then in the process, the person you become.
You know, in the context of the business world, where we see opportunities for women is actually just bringing women together. And so what we do at Medtronic, probably not unlike many organizations, is we've created a women's network, but it's chaired by our CEO. And the purpose and the importance of this forum is to help kind of uncover for women, what are the unique obstacles, barriers, issues, and opportunities that women see in the workplace? And how do we as a leadership team help to remove those barriers and help to accelerate their success and help women reach their fullest potential in the business world? And kind of back to this notion of confidence. We had Katty Kay, this author of the Confidence Code, come to speak to about 800 women last year at Medtronic. And what I've observed and in talking with women is there's this connection between, the need to be perfect or perfectionism and confidence. And so, back to the example of the job description, it's like, wow, well, if I am not 100% perfect at all of the different plays and nuances of playing basketball, then, maybe I shouldn't go forward. And so what we've tried to do is just help women to understand you don't have to have every single, criterion of a job description covered. Let's talk about what you actually aspire to do in the context of your career and help remove some of those barriers and help kind of nurture and guide, introduce mentors, have access to some of the senior leaders in the organization, and being willing to, I don't necessarily like these words, but, place a bet or accelerate a promotion of a woman into a job that she actually is quite qualified for, but she may not think so in her own head. And so I think it's really just being able to really kind of assess what's going on in the collective heads of women in our organization, perceived or real, and help to kind of deconstruct and address each one of those issues. And I would say, in large part, it is this notion of confidence and am I qualified, to get myself in the ring, if you will, for other opportunities, and basically bring women together who, collectively see that they may not necessarily understand how to navigate or break down some of these obstacles in the workforce. And then finally, there are a lot of qualities. I think sometimes as women we see and may be surrounded by men who, again, I'm not trying to stereotype, but I'm just saying there's a pattern. If, there are men in the room around a conference table, they take up a lot of oxygen in the room. And sometimes it may be hard for a woman who is either more deferent to senior leaders or who may be, again, less confident either about the topic to slowly but surely sort of recede into the background and maybe less willing to express her point of view. And so our role as leaders is to say, women in general tend to display a lot of the characteristics that we value in an organization: collaboration, listening skills, seeking a win-win solution. It doesn't always have to be about her as an individual, but how do we collectively get the organization to win? So maybe just a couple of examples of how we try to play up and underscore the importance of traits that women bring to leadership roles, but at the same time boosting confidence in perhaps areas that women may not have as much confidence as men.
Will you ask me the question one more time? I want to make sure that because I remembered, I was thinking of what I was going to say when you asked it, and then I've been listening to everybody, and I just want to make sure.
What I asked was, since confidence seems to be a theme that you're all talking about as a very key piece of this conversation, what are some of the things that you do in terms of the mentoring that you're doing for women?
Yes, okay. Sorry, isn't that funny how you get, and then all of a sudden your thoughts change, and I think, oh wait, why was I even going to answer it that way?
Because you were listening to what they were saying.
Yes,
and it was,
yeah, exactly. I always go back to confidence is about preparation in anything. Yeah, we can skate by and we can get by with natural talent or preparation that you had on a previous project or something like that. But really, when you walk into a room and you walk in with that look on your face and that way that you walk, is because you're prepared. And that's just something, and so it just goes back to what I always say to people. I wish there was a magic potion to get you to the top and where you want to be, but it frankly is really just hard work. It's just time and passion and hard work, and that really is the cocktail. Women Athletes Business Network at EY did a really good job after the Rio Olympics, and we had this celebration for 8 of our Olympians. They were international from all over the world that were going to become interns at EY. And so I think, too, how can an athlete at the top of their game start the next phase of their life with that same confidence? You can't just translate preparation from one area into your new area and really walk with that confidence. So I think what's so nice about that transition is that they do have those people helping them, not holding their hands, but supporting what they probably already think is right, but in telling them, yes, you're right on track. That's exactly what we want you to do, or that's exactly how you do it. Or you know what? That isn't. It's no big deal. Let me show you how to do it. So to me, first of all, I love the fact that there are people that are doing that. I like that the skills are being translated in a really productive way. But I also want to encourage athletes in this room, it's okay not to be great right away at the next thing that you do. And the chances of you being great right away are very slim. So embrace, again, being scared to try something new. Embrace, again, those little hiccups and failures that you will have in your next phase of life. But just know that you're going to call upon all those things that Leah was talking about earlier that you learned through sport. But preparation is always the key to confidence, I think.
Well, thank you. And what it sounds like you're also talking about are 2 additional things. One is the failure piece, which Summer, you spoke very eloquently about, that there should be a different word for failure. And I know Ruth has really spent a lot of time saying we need to find another way for female athletes to be able to say failure is it's a stepping stone, or instead of a roadblock, right? And so that's one thing that you seem to be talking about that seems to be key. The other is this idea about relationships and the team. And could you talk a little bit about what the metrics are, or what the things are that you try to do to take advantage of the fact that female athletes and female leaders in business have a tendency to do much more about the team and the relationships, and how can that be used to be able to be a better leader in whatever circumstance they find themselves? And I'll just leave that as open for anyone who wants to talk about that.
Well, I can start. One of the things that we always talk in the beginning of the year is what we want our culture to be. What is the ultimate goal of our team? Normally, to maximize your potential, correct? There hasn't been one season where I brought my girls in and that they have said that is the only thing that's important. They always strive for their core values to build trusting, strong relationships. I've asked them at times, let's fast forward to the banquet. What do you want that banquet to be about? Again, they come back with relationships, connections. 2 years ago, we were 30-1. We broke lots of records. At that banquet, there was not one thing we said about the record. It was about the experience. And it's about, just like Summer said, the journey and how we shared life together. The ups and the downs. Jimmy Valvano had a great quote. It's a full day. If you laugh, if you cry, if you think, that's a full day. And so what we try to do is we try to bring them together in an environment where we'll be vulnerable, but we'll continue to have the relationships. And I think that's one of the things that is the beauty of women in leadership roles. In leadership roles, leadership is about influence. How you can motivate someone or influence someone to a certain action. Well, that doesn't happen without relationships, without connections. Because nobody is going to care unless they know you care for them. And so we really talk a lot about the relationships. And you see from my female athletes how important those connections and relationships are. And I will tell you, I have one of the best jobs in the world. Because the young women I get to work with, and I get to go to their weddings, and I get to share their lives, it's just incredible.
Real quick, I was just going to say that one thing I love about the sports piece is that you can be a leader, and there's so many different ways to be a leader, and there's the classic if you're just the best athlete on the team, and then everyone's kind of following you because just your physical presence and what you're doing is so amazing, and there's the athlete that's just that vocal leader, and they just bring all that energy, and they're big, and so you're following them because they just every day can bring that. And for me, it was I knew I had to work harder than everybody else to stay on the team. And so one of the goals that I set when I started is that I'd never be asked to do something twice because I didn't work hard enough. Now, I had to do it twice, many times, but it was never because I didn't give it everything I had. And so that became how I could lead that team, is when I really needed people to push through, I could be that person. So when then I started working in the front offices of the Minnesota Timberwolves, the first thing I kind of noticed is it's a big place and there's a lot going on and you have to get things done. And if you want to get tickets, like from Chris Wright, the president of the Timberwolves, his assistant, if you want to get tickets from her, you have to create a relationship with her. And so, so what I realized was it was all about figuring people out, and the relationships at work is like, oh, you know what, she does it this way, I do it this way, so we're gonna have to come together and do it that way. The whole office was created in that way. And so once I figured out how to maneuver that, all of a sudden things move so much easier, and you find that that's really a leadership skill, is figuring out how other people work and how you can work with them. So just those little transitional skills that go back and forth.
I was in an individual sport. There wasn't anybody else in my lane, but I oftentimes felt like I had an entire team pulling me along. I went to Stanford. I had one of the best coaches in the history of coaches. In fact, Tara Vanderveer, when she got to Stanford, first thing she did was go and meet with my coach, Richard Quick, as she says, to figure out how to win, because he had this formula for winning. He was a very powerful motivator, and he could make you believe the impossible was possible. And I say that because my greatest achievement as a swimmer was winning the Ncaa championship as a team in 1992 for Stanford. And it went the absolute opposite way we had planned it. So imperfection can be so beautiful at times. Our best swimmer, Jennie Thompson, who is the greatest relay swimmer in the history of the sport, she false started in her very first race. So that meant we were 20 points down at the very beginning of the meet. And something happened when that occurred. No one freaked out. No one freaked out on her. It was like a flip was switched, and or a switch was flipped. Sorry. I saw other people going, wait a second, that didn't sound right. A switch was flipped, and it's like it fired us up. And I rarely feel that from my own actions. It was like a glue that brought us together. And I do feel like as a team, when we would train every single day, I was very lucky. I was training with some of the best swimmers in the world on a daily basis. And it was sort of that, who is the coach from the Miracle on Ice? Herb Ritz, right? You remember how he got everybody to hate him?
Wow, the audience are panelists.
Yes. So he got everybody to hate him, and that's really how we came together too. Like Richard would give us hard workout after hard workout after hard workout, and we came together and we would yell at each other in the pool, and this is fourth quarter, you've got this. And it literally made us so much stronger together, which I'm sure if you're on Twitter or anything like that, you know this female hashtag of stronger together, that we are stronger together, and we do need to remind each other of that. The last thing I'll say is, and I think even in a team atmosphere when you're walking into the locker room, but frankly, even when you're walking into your own bedroom or bathroom, writing your goals down is not just for our kids. You know, writing your goals down is so powerful. I always think it's a dream when you think it, and it becomes a real goal when you write it down. And then it becomes your true path when you say it to someone. So you need to own those actions and decide if you really want it. Because oftentimes, you might not really want it if you're just thinking it, but you certainly do when you're talking about it, I think. That's my opinion.
You know, if I think about the relationship component of being on a team, I would say the relationships are knit from credibility. And what I mean by that is if you're on a high-performing team who wants to win but hates to lose even more, then you're going to be able to build stronger relationships with your teammates. And I'm using this term broadly, whether that's on a sports team or whether that's on a leadership team in the business environment, because your teammates are going to look at you and say, are you credible? Are you competent? And do you do what you say you're going to do? In other words, do you pull your own weight on that team? And can your teammates depend on you? And, to Summer's point, it's like if, we all win and lose together. And if one of your teammates has fallen or, can't deliver their business results in the context of the work world, or if you've got a teammate who's injured or somehow, isn't pulling their own weight, the rest of the team has to come together because, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. The basketball team wins. It's not the individual person who wins. It's, the company who performs best on the stock market wins. It's not the individual leader of a function or a business. And so, the relationships, in my view, are kind of born out of each person building their credibility and with their teammates by doing what you say you're going to do, being prepared, working hard to make sure that you're not just kind of showing up on the court or in the pool without having done your homework or your training. And likewise, in the business world, all of these skills are incredibly transferable because nobody wants to be around or building relationships with the person who's not doing their homework or not pulling their own weight, but yet, gets the credit because they're just part of the team, but yet they're really not pulling their own weight. So, I think, Summer's point around building, confidence comes from being prepared, doing your homework, and everything that you're doing. If you're an athlete, my background was classical ballet, and I say, all of those lessons of discipline, of hard work, of dress rehearsals, of preparing to the nth degree are the same things that I do, in my work life. And so, everything that you're doing now, if you're an athlete, is absolutely transferable and incredibly important in the business world. And I would also offer, as women, I think in the business world, we probably outperform our male counterparts in the world of preparation, because we have these, this kind of innate desire to always get it right. And I think that's actually a great secret weapon.
We have a saying that we always use. It's from Darrell Woods in Ncaa, and it's responsible to the element, accountable to the mission. And I think that hits exactly what you just said.
Well, I think that is a perfect place for us to open it up to some questions from the audience. So if there are individuals out there who might have questions for the panelists, please raise your hand and we will try to get a microphone to you so that you can ask the question and be heard out loud.
And Dawn, we also have these medals which are kind of weighing me down in one direction. So if anyone hasn't had a chance to see Summer's medals, please let me know and we'll get them over.
It's making our risk management team very nervous to have Olympic
yes,
medals
we have
Just
actual,
so you know.
we have valuables
Yes.
circulating the room. Not only valuable in terms of their actual element, but valuable in terms of what they symbolize.
There's a chain they put around my waist here too. So.
I just have to say, if you've had a chance to hold them, first of all, they have lots of personality, I call it, which are also known as dings and dents. But two of them have broken. My bronze one, the top part popped off right soon after the Olympics. And then my dad put it back together with dental cement, and it has not budged since. And then one of my gold medals, the top part popped off, which actually is just a shell, so there's a chance it might be real gold. But it was at an elementary school, and I can't imagine this little kid. He never fessed up, or she never fessed up who it was, but I can't imagine how panicked they were. But it popped off, and then so a show was at my house redoing one of my rooms, and they had epoxy. So they put epoxy in there, but it leaked out all the way around. So my medals they're as similar to the saying often, they're perfectly imperfect. They symbolize my life in the best way.
They've been through the journey and the process, and they're continuing. So, are there questions that you might have for?
Yeah, I have a question. So there's a lot of research out there about women in leadership and that they face a double bind where they're expected to act in certain ways, yet those ways aren't always rewarded the same or valued the same. Such as being collaborative, relational, and so on. And if they act counter to that, it's kind of, they're penalized for that as well, whereas men have a lot more latitude in how they display their leadership. So I'm curious as to how you've dealt with that or how you've mentored young women to do the same.
Go ahead. I would offer, we talk about that concept or that issue a lot, and I think one of the lessons that I've learned personally and that I would extend is, don't try to be a man. Don't try to act like a man. And if that's not your natural kind of DNA to be, edgy or aggressive or, confronting an issue, you can still do it in a way that is effective. And I know what you're saying, which is, if men are aggressive or address conflict, they're powerful and they're clear thinkers. And if women do it, the B word comes out. And so, my counsel and the way we counsel women inside of Medtronic is be who you are. You can be tough-minded and very clear and very direct, but it doesn't have to be, completely counter to your own personal style. So, I think there's going to be an underlying perception. Everyone is going to have their own perceptions and code certain behaviors certain ways. But my counsel is always just be genuine, authentic, clear and logical in your point of view, and convicted. And when that comes through, then I think that's what garners respect, and then there's not another additional label that's attached to however you deliver a message or how you engage in a conversation.
I agree. I just want to say, when I did my very first interview in 1992, after the Olympics, and I was 19 at the time, and I hadn't given a lot of speeches, and I hadn't spoken in front of anything bigger than my high school class. And my dad came up to me and he was like, "Are you nervous?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm a little bit nervous." And he goes, "Just be yourself." And I thought, that's the strangest advice, because wouldn't it be harder to be somebody else? It's the easiest thing to be who you are. And so I think it's so right. Be your authentic, great self. And that can't ever be wrong, although you're never going to please everyone. So just be authentically great in who you are and make people great around you. And whatever they say you are is their opinion. You know authentically who you are. I think it goes back to that confidence and trusting your ability.
Other questions?
Sally? Thank you. Great job, ladies. My question is, women's sports, you hardly ever read any scandals about women's sports teams and activities. But men's sports, it's just it's a scandal of the day. What do you think are the key differences between men's sports and women's sports? And I don't know if any of it's locker room talk related at all, but just your opinions.
Do you have to go there?
I will say that there are scandals in women's sports and in men's sports, but the difference is that women come to sports in a different way. Women do not come to sports thinking that they're going to have millions and millions and millions of dollars waiting at the end. So we are then going to bypass any ethical pieces and just do the win-at-all-cost piece to get there, which is what we really see a lot in men's sports. And so you see not only the athlete, but coaches and administrators pushing athletes through who aren't prepared, who aren't educated to get them to the promised land, and then we see the issues. In women's sports, there is an expectation. In college, you know that this is probably the end. If you've been lucky enough to get to college, you're probably at the end of your rope. And if there is a WNBA sitting there, you still have to be, the greatest of the great. And it's, although an amazing, great experience, it's not going to be the $1 million payout. So the mindset is a different mindset from start to end. And so I think that it kind of goes back to how we treat all of our athletes as they go through, is that they, the men, the young boys and the young girls need to be taught, and we need to respect every piece of them, not just as athletes, and they can never, again, allow themselves just to see themselves as athletes, so then they don't have the scandalous piece. But I think it's really surrounded by, basically by the amount of money and the kind of the vultures that come out when that money is there.
And I think there's a culture in the conversation, too, that has to change on the men's sports side. And it needs to change in youth sports. So I love the fact that there are these amazing male athletes, professional athletes, that are coming out and saying that domestic violence is unacceptable in our league. The fact that they have to say that is crazy, but they are. And that's a very strong voice for a young boy to hear, right? That if their hero is saying, this is wrong, I would never, ever think to hit a woman. But we need more voices like that to make this change in the conversation at the youth level as to what is acceptable and what is cool in pro sports standards. And I think 99% of these NFL, MLB, NHL players are up for being those voices. I really do. We do hear about, the few that are awful and that are bad, but we do have scandals on the women's side as well, and I agree. I think a lot of it is the fame and the money and thinking that that just puts you in a different category as a citizen, and it doesn't. So
I would also suggest that I think as women, we take our role as role models much more seriously. I know with our teams that they're always reaching out, even if it's a high school team, they've got the Little Eagle program. They do so much with mentorship with us in our camps and our clinics. It's not just the skills that we're talking, it's the character. I mean, you take a look at the Minnesota Lynx, they're phenomenal young women, but they reach out much more. And so I know in the male counterpart, sometimes it's like, well, we're not a role model. That's not expected to us. On the women's side, I think we do take that's part of who we are, and that's what we should do. We should promote the entire person. So I think it is also from that lens as well.
But I have to say, I think the media is partly responsible for this too, right? We don't focus on the good, all the charity work that these players are doing. And frankly, professional sports is, what would you say, like 80% male? I mean, we have many more male athletes to talk about, and we choose the scandals. Yes, many of them have to make headlines and all of that, but there is amazing work being done, grassroots, in their hometowns, one-on-one, giving back every single one of these athletes. And so honestly, like, if we could focus on that a little bit more, positive TV, right? I think that actually is a TV, like a website or something, but how many people go to it, right? And if we focused on that more, I think that could change the culture as well.
Which that might be one of the ways to get at the larger cultural change that you're really getting at, right? Is the sense of, how do we make this a change for the larger culture at all different levels of sport and then business as well. I know there's a question.
I just had a question about why there are so few women coaches on the NCAA or Olympic level. I mean, I watched the Olympic swim team, which had a wonderful success, but there were no women coaches on the staff at all. And I'm looking, I think in swimming there's only 14% of the NCAA coaches are women.
Yeah, I mean, Terry McKeever was the head coach for London. Unfortunately, Cal, the swimmers just didn't swim well enough at Olympic trials. We do have one head women's coach, one head men's coach that is already established before heading into trials, and then all the other coaches are really appointed per how many swimmers they get on the team. I'll be honest, I don't think I could coach. My kids are 10 and 8. I travel enough with the work that I do. And one of my very good friends, Lee Lovelace, was the head women's swimming coach at Stanford. And I remember this one moment, I brought my kids to the Olympic trials in 2012. She was on the pool deck, and I introduced her to my kids. And she started crying, because she missed her kids so much. And in seeing my kids, it just reminded her of being away from her own family and how much time coaches put in to that journey of creating champions and amazing people. And it's all at the parenting time, right? It's when they get out of school, that's when the coach shows up, but that's when your kids are at home. I don't know. I know we have a lot of very quality female coaches in swimming. I know that I couldn't do it with the schedule and the dedication and the passion that these coaches have to put in to their teams. So I don't have the answer for you, but I know Terry McKeever is one that really stands out. Jill Sturkle from University of Texas. We had a lot of new male coaches on this Olympic team. Ray Luz, who I swam with at Indiana, had several swimmers. Do you remember the finger wagger? Yeah. What was her name? Say again? Yes, Lily King, the finger wagger. So that was Ray Luz's swimmer. So a lot of new coaches. But I would think that you can answer this really well.
I think a lot of it has to do with the lifestyle. I mean, as you said, if you're going to try to raise a family, you need to have someone that is going to put your goals just as high as you do. And I've been very, very fortunate to have a husband who is incredible. Our team here at St. Thomas is his team. But there's been a lot of times where I've had to miss my sons' or daughters' basketball games because I'm with St. Thomas. And so it's something that you have to have a collaborative effort with it. I know Cheryl Sandward wrote the book Lean In, and she did a phenomenal job of talking about that we all have to lean in together to support women. Mary Zimmer, who is with Wells Fargo, is a former women's basketball player here, Mary Ashenbrenner. She's involved with us. Her husband, Bill, has been a phenomenal support system for them. You need to have that, and I think that's a lot of times the disconnect is because I don't think there's a lot of men out there that can be that supportive. It's really something that's very special.
Here's a question right here.
This is a really good follow-up question to what John just asked, but in the workplace. So there's research out there that shows that women tend not to help other women move up the ranks. So it seems like there's a disconnect between what we're taught when we're on teams and to be collaborative. So something's happening and we're losing that along the way. And I was wondering if you guys could speak to that and things that you implement either in your own lives or in your businesses to try and encourage that behavior among women.
Yeah, you're right. There is research out there that suggests that, and I think particularly for women who have been in the workplace longer, there's a little bit of the mentality that, well, I had to claw and scratch my way. Why am I going to make it any easier for my counterparts? Which is a horrible way to think about things. And I think it's for each organization really, our collective responsibilities to make sure that we create the right forums and the expectations of women to support women, whether that's through the networks that I mentioned or resource groups. And senior leaders who are women who set that expectation and tone with the broader organization that, part of your role here as a senior, woman is to make sure that you're creating the environment and setting the expectation that women need to help one another, extend the helping hand and support each other in the process of what the trade-offs are that we all have to make in the workplace, and to make sure that we're supporting other women in developing their careers and advancing their careers. So it's certainly a barrier that needs to be overcome, and one that we need to talk about more openly and just reset and level set what the expectations are.
Okay, we have time for one last question, right? There you go.
Thank you for so much for being here. It's been really an inspiring morning. It's entirely possible in 2 weeks we'll have our first woman president. Mm-hmm. And just in talking about cultural change, I'm wondering, Hillary Rodham Clinton talked about when she became Secretary of State that sports helped build her leadership skills and taught her how to be a part of a team. And if she wins, regardless how you feel politically, how much do her accomplishments reflect upon this narrative?
I mean, to have a female president, I just when you say that, you don't have to attach a name, however you feel, to have a female president. The other shocking thing is we're actually behind, right? Like basically every other country has had a female leader, and we're one of the ones that hasn't. I would be very excited. I would be excited for the future. There will be a generation, let's say, for instance, she's in for 8 years. There will be a generation that has only known a female president in the United States, and I think that's just, it's mind-blowing, actually. I remind my dad all the time of the challenges women face still in our country, of working the same hours and for not the same paycheck, and he's floored by that concept. He's 75, and he still just doesn't quite hit him that that's the way it is. Hey, we're strong, and we can do amazing things because that's in our DNA. But I think if we have a female leader, our voice becomes even stronger. Not just because she would be saying it. I think our voices will become stronger and clearer. Whether you're Republican or Democrat, I do feel like it will have a profound effect upon our gender. And I would be excited to see that.
Yeah, I mean, I would say aside from the policy changes, I do think it collectively lifts the ceiling. The glass ceiling should forever be removed theoretically, and I do think that, to Summer's point, there will be a generation that grows up of women where anything is possible, whether you want to be a coach of a sporting team or whether you want to be a CEO of an organization. So I think just the inspirational aspects that it provides to women in our country is phenomenal. And I just have to say, back to qualifications, if you think about the former Secretary of State, Senator, back to the black and white CV, I would just say, wow, I mean, incredible qualifications that, I would hope are acknowledged.
I would say there's something really magical that happens when you see someone in a position that looks like you. And I saw it happen with my son with Barack Obama, is all of a sudden you have a dream and a magical moment that you could be that person and you could rise to that level. And if that were to happen, then my daughter would have that same opportunity to see herself in that space. And so we need to see you. It's hard to imagine sometimes if you never see that leader, if you never see that person in the same way that the Minnesota Lynx have brought these incredible role models that we have never seen before. A president of the United States would be that little thing that happens in a little girl's mind of, ooh, I'm going to do that. And they don't even think that they can't do that. So I just think it's a magical moment for little girls, and with President Obama was for African Americans, that same feeling.
And I would agree. I think it was 10 years ago, Walmart had a shirt, as a girl, I want to be president, and they pulled that shirt. They said that it wasn't appropriate. And now, 4 years ago, St. Thomas hired as president a female. She has been in our locker room. She has talked to our girls. Again, for them to see what they can become, what a great inspiration.
Excellent. We're out of time. So I want to thank all of you for coming. And we greatly appreciate the fact that you are here with us to have this conversation and hopefully continue the work that we are so dedicated to as we go forward. I also want to thank our sponsors again. Thank you so much for sponsoring us today. And I want to thank the panelists. Thank you so much. And I want to remind everyone that the panelists will be here for another 25 minutes or so. If you'd like to talk with them and you'd like to do a little bit of networking and have some conversation, please feel free to do that. Thank you so much, everyone.